Welcome everyone to Global Government News. Today is Friday, October 22nd, 2010, and I'm Darko. This is part 2 of this economic news bulletin. I usually fit it into one video, but there's a lot of news articles out there that I feel needed to be covered. So we'll continue with this one. The 75 ways that the government and the financial elite will be sucking even more of the lifeblood out of the American people in 2011. And I was thinking about it. I meant to mention it last video, but we just kind of ran out of time. Is all this whole vampire craze. I haven't really gotten into it, but someone at the Barnes and Noble, a young woman, noticed it, and she's pretty much sick of it too. And maybe that's what it's all about. Maybe this is what the whole vampire craze is, the theme, right? Because all these themes and trends, to me, is my personal belief that it doesn't come from the bottom, the grassroots, and if it does, it usually comes from the top down, and maybe that's what they're trying to tell us, that they are the vampires and they are sucking the life out of us. And we finished up here with this state governments, number one, across the U.S. are raising fees and taxes in so many different ways it's staggering. Talks about this reader Richard, who wrote in from England, talking about how he's renewing his DMV, going to the DMV and noticing all these rates increasing. He says, I have a computerized record of all my financial transactions over the last many years. I looked up previous DMV license plate renewals and I saw that my vehicle license plate fees were up 187% in only 8 years. In other words, they were almost triple that what they were 8 years ago. Number two, the healthcare costs are also they also continue to escalate out of control. Moving down here, number three, but it isn't just our health insurance premiums that are going up because of the new healthcare law. It says one review of the healthcare legislation identified at least 19 different tax increases. Not only that, according to the analysis by the Congressional Joint Committee on Taxation, the healthcare reform law will generate $400 billion in additional taxes for the American people by the year 2019. Yeah, because I was reading about that, about how it's going to pay itself off. We're actually going to make money by passing the healthcare bill. And yeah, definitely don't buy that. But it says, number four, from coast to coast, the big Wall Street banks are buying up thousands upon thousands of tax liens and are all making a killing by socking distressed homeowners with predatory interest, outrageous penalties, and almost unbelievable legal fees. And moving down here, number five, the lowest bracket for the personal income tax is going to increase from 10% to 15%. And moving down here, the next lowest bracket for the personal income tax is going to increase from 25% to 28%. The 28% tax bracket is going to increase 31%. The 33% tax bracket increased 36%. And the biggest one is the 35% tax bracket is going to increase almost 40%. Says number 10, in 2011, the death tax is scheduled to return. So death tax is back in 2011. So instead of paying 0%, estates of $1 million or more are going to be taxed at a rate of 55%. The capital gains tax is going to increase from 15 to 20%. On dividends, 15 to 40%. The marriage, that's a real free market, isn't it, guys? The marriage penalty is also scheduled to be reinstated in 2011. Members of the Congress keep promising to do something about this, but so far nothing has. Says many American businesses are going to get hit with a very significant tax increase in 2011. Small businesses have been able to expense rather than slowly depreciate equipment purchases up to $250,000 a year. Now that will be slashed down to $25,000. Larger businesses had been able to expense half of their purchase of equipment. Now all of it will have to be depreciated. And they're also talking about a value-added tax, a national tax on top of all the other taxes. Of course, we're going to have the CO2 or a cap and trade, either a direct carbon CO2 tax or a cap and trade system. It says number 15, they keep talking about it, but so far Congress has not passed a fix for the alternative minimum tax. So there you go. It says, and the following are all a bunch of other taxes that Americans must pay each and every year, which seem to continually go up, and it just goes through all the different taxes: federal income tax, unemployment tax, food license tax, fuel permit tax, gasoline tax, hunting license tax, inheritance tax, local income tax, liquor tax, and it just goes on. Social Security, everything. And finishing up here, 71, the internet is increasingly being viewed as a potential major revenue source. Many of the U.S. states are working harder than ever to collect taxes that they feel are owed from online transactions on the internet, and that is true. Student loan debt is more of a financial drain on Americans than ever before. It says Americans now owe more on student loans than they do on credit cards. It says as hard as that is to believe, that is actually true. Americans now owe more than $800 billion on student loans, which is now an all-time record. I just covered an article last video where I think it was $26,000 per student is the average debt they carry. So number 73, more Americans than ever find themselves unable to pay their bills. An increasing number of frustrated creditors are actually resorting to wage garnishment and even debtor's prison, maybe. Yes, I think in Ohio that was debtor's prison. But it said, yes, you read it correctly. Creditors are starting to ruthlessly go after the weekly paychecks of debtors. And it goes on here, another excerpt. It says here, number 74, many state and local governments throughout the U.S. are now viewing their police forces primarily as revenue-raising organizations. Well, that's what they've always been. All those laws aren't there because I was thinking about this today, actually last night, because here in Indiana you have to show your ID, your state ID, for all alcohol and tobacco purchases. Even if you're an old man with gray hair, no hair, or gray hair, and you're in a wheelchair, and you're on a oxygen machine, and you look like old man in time, they're going to still ID you in Indiana. See, so it's not even reasonable. It's not even logical. No common sense. Has nothing to do with health or safety. It's about raising revenue. Well, that isn't, but this is what it's all about, is raising revenue. The whole ID thing is about getting people used to having to have some kind of form of identification, so you can purchase goods. That's what it's all about. It's about getting people used to paying getting into the cashless society where only those who are deemed appropriate by the state or give authorization by the state as a good standing. You're a citizen in good standing. You'll be allowed to purchase your GMO food and that. So that's pretty much it for that one. Big article, just wanted to cover it. Spending Review 2010, NHS faces bed blocking crisis. Patients will be denied hospital beds. Says they will be filled by the elderly and vulnerable who are unable to get counsel care after coalition cuts. A health service chief warns. This is from the Telegraph. Patients will be left untreated as the NHS struggles to mop up the consequences of severe cuts in local authority funding, says Nigel Edwards, the head of the NHS Confederation. Says the coalition has promised to increase the NHS budget over the next 4 years, even if it cuts more than £40 billion from the other public services. Local councils will bear some of the heaviest cuts. But they will. Taxpayers face £22 billion bill if BT goes bust. The taxpayers could be forced to pay out up to $22 billion to BT pensioners should the telecoms group go bust. Moving on here. The next one up, no relief for house prices next year, bank warns. House prices will fall next year. The Bank of England has warned as home loans become harder to secure amid government spending cuts. The warning will add to the growing fears about fragile housing prices after values dropped by their ever biggest monthly amount in September. That's where they worded that. The massive job cuts in the public sector and the squeeze on the household budgets announced by the Chancellor this week are expected to make it even harder for buyers to secure finance. U.S. foreclosure mess chills investors and clouds market. This is from Reuters. Investors who have been snapping up foreclosed homes are backing off in the wake of a U.S. Foreclosure fiasco driven by sagging inventory and fears over legal title, and some economists say the trend could hurt the overall housing market. So, it says with the foreclosed properties accounting for a large portion of housing sales and investors accounting for a large portion of buyers, particularly in key markets with very high foreclosure rates, the implications for the broader economy could be serious. Food stamps usage soars among working families. This is from the Huffington Post, but it was carried, actually this is from the AP, but it was carried by pretty much everyone today. It says Lily Gonzalez, whatever. I don't want to say whatever, I don't care. It's just, this is going to be one of those. It says data from the U.S. Department of Agriculture review that the AP shows that 30 states have adopted rules making it easier to qualify for food stamps since 2007. In all, 38 states have loosened eligibility standards. So prior to an October 1 increase, the income eligibility liability for Hawaii family was of $38,000. So Said with more than 1 in 8 Americans now on food stamps, participation in the program has jumped about 70% from 26 million in May 2007, while the nation's unemployment rate rose from 4.3 to 9.2% through September of this year. Says we've seen a huge increase in participation due to the economic downturn, says Gene Daniel, spokesman for the USDA's Food and Nutrition Service. That's the way this program was designed. Yeah, but it's not sustainable in my view. Says Indiana ends. You gotta steal from rob Peter to pay Paul. Indiana is coming from, that money's gonna be coming from somewhere is what I'm getting at. Indiana ends food aid for developmentally disabled. And it says here, Indiana has quietly ended a state grocery benefit paid to hundreds of developmentally, I never pronounced that word, or had to pronounce that word before, so I'm having kind of a problem with it. Maybe that means I'm part of this group. It says disabled people who advocates say have no money of their own to buy food. The State Family and Social Services Administration withdrew the grocery benefits just weeks after it announced it would no longer reduce the benefit for those who receive food stamps, which a lawsuit claimed was a violation of federal law. It prohibits food stamps from being counted against other benefits. So check that one out, guys. 1 in 5 Spaniards live in poverty. 1 out of every 3 Spanish households is struggling to make ends meet, while more than 1 in 5 Spanish citizens live in relative poverty. From the WashingtonExaminer.com, cash-strapped governments ramping up tax collection efforts. Tax officials throughout the Washington region are trying new and often extraordinary measures to collect tens of millions of dollars in delinquent payments as huge projected budget deficits threaten to slash public services. That's what they call austerity now, like what we were just talking about, right? Cutting the benefits for the disabled. And this is what I mentioned in the last video in part 1, is that the government is very, very, very efficient at collecting money. I mean, look at the IRS manuals. The thing is, you know, a good little example is when, I don't know who it was, but I don't know if it was Ron Paul or something. I don't really care because, like, I'm not in politics anymore, but they held up a little thing of the Constitution, and they're like, look at how thin this is, and this is how you can run a country and run a nation. And then they show the IRS, which is just a manual of, like, you know, a million pages. I'm being sarcastic here, but you can see what I'm getting at here. The amount of codes and laws and everything that are set up to collect that money. So they're going to get their money. It says together, Washington area localities are owed more than $40 million in overdue real estate taxes from 2010 alone. Additional millions in uncovered fines, fees, and personal property tax revenues compound those shortfalls. So there you go. State's hurting. They're coming for their money. UK to slash £81 billion in spending. UK Chancellor George Osborne announces the details of a £81 billion in government spending cuts, which will slash up to 1 million private and public sector jobs. And it says it will see 500,000 job cuts from the public sector as public departments face an average of 19% in cuts. And that's not going to be good, man, because they basically allowed all kinds of people to immigrate into their country. They got a lot of workers with not a lot of work, and this isn't going to help them. It says it's not going to help the Brits that have been there, been born there, and their families are raised there. It's not going to help those people. They're struggling. £170 million cut for flood defense budget. UK government has delivered a widely anticipated blow to the construction industry by cutting more than £170 million from budgets for flood defenses. Next one up is from People's Online. CPI, Consumer Price Index, increase sparks worries. Says China still faces strong inflationary pressure in the coming months after consumer prices hit a nearly 2-year high in September, raising the possibility of more monetary tightening measures, economists said. The possible measures, however, will not hamper China from playing a major role in the global economic recovery. The Consumer Price Index, the main gauge of inflation, reached 3.6% in September year on year, and it says it was up 0.6% from August. Price rises contributed to 64% of the CPI increase compared to 36% of the comparison base last year. Government spelled out Thursday just how much the most expensive rescue of the financial crisis will end up costing taxpayers, as much as $259 billion for mortgage buyers Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. Wall Street picked for State Department post. And please check out this link down here, from global depression to global governance, and it takes a quote from Carol Quigley, a historian, and basically talks about the financial system as we know it and how it basically is a feudalist system to be controlled by a few.